Welcome back to a sort of young person's guide to prog rock. I am your host, Ian Prize, and I am back with Nick, Omen, and Ed, and we are continuing on Jethro Tull's Songs from the Woods. Here we go. So we are into a very, very saucy, a very, very steamy, a very, very scandalous song, and we are kicking it off with Hunting Girl. So I guess before we get to the lyrics of the song, just so we can retain our chi, we're going to start with the music to keep it Puritan.
Oh my God.
So I know in my heart of hearts that all of these songs are the goddamn same song, where they do a flute riff, they do an old English higgity-jiggity, then they go into some sweet riffs, and then we're off.
Yeah, like the first 9 albums of Weezer, same exact thing. Yeah,
same. And I think that's the thing. And I was like, I think you can get down thinking about this, but I don't actually notice that. I think there's enough variation in every single song.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, this song, we still have the doodly-doodly-doos to kind of kick it off, but then the trotting and the riding, the kind of galloping beats, I think you feel like, okay, now we're, even though we were still doing the flutes and the riffs and the minstrel dancing and all this sort of stuff, we're off. We're doing the hunt now.
Yeah.
What I find really interesting about this sort of era of music in general is like how little variation there is in equipment. Like everyone's
there are probably
kind of using
fewer
this,
options.
Yeah, well, that's essentially it. Like I've got more stuff in this room than Matt and Bart ever saw at this point.
Right. Yeah, totally.
He wouldn't have been aware of any of this stuff. But I think because there's fewer ingredients in the sauce, then each one of those ingredients has a bigger impact on the flavour of the dish. But what a hefty song. In fact, I was making notes that the first 4 words I wrote were almost Sabbath-like heft. It's meaty, isn't it?
One of the things that Ian and Tull are so good about doing, really throughout the entire canon, but this song is a great example of, is never letting your ear rest. We have the, like you pointed out, Ian, we have the dum bum 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 ba da ba ba bum, this old Galliardi feeling thing, and then immediately contrasted with that, Martin comes in, so your ear doesn't know where to sit. And therefore, it's always alert. It's always fresh. Even the way that Ian sings it, he starts out the first couple of verses by emphasizing the beat. And on the master race, the ba ba dum ba da 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 da. And then at the end of that verse, he changes to do almost a triplet. One fine young lady's horse. So just even in the subtle shifts of his own delivery, he's not giving us a place to rest, which means we're always in this state of, oh my God, what's happening? Oh, it's this thing.
Yeah, we're going. Yeah.
And it's such a galloping vibe as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
The way that vocal punctuation sits with the rhythm section, it's almost martial-like. Obviously, the hunting theme, obviously, that makes sense. Galloping, hunting, military.
So on the hunting theme, so I guess for many people, maybe in America, whatever, you're just thinking of hunting. You go out and you hunt a thing. But you go hunt. It's It's in the name.
Yeah.
But hunting in Britain, Americans, explain to me what hunting in Britain means.
To our uncouth minds, it's that idea of the men in the red coats hunting fox, tally-ho, pip-pip, riding the horses, hearing the baying of the hounds. And it's more of a social event as opposed to 2 men sitting a mile apart from one another in a frigid autumn morning waiting for a deer to show up.
Because they're not gay.
Yeah.
Separate trees.
Yeah.
Yes, there's nothing more English than a fox hunt. But even within that, there's social casting already, and he does a brilliant job of setting it up. Here's a fox hunt, and I'm not part of it because I'm just some rando.
Yeah.
Yeah. As an actual British person,
I don't know what you're on about.
Do you have any way to flesh this out?
No, but you're right about it, the institution element of it. Even where you can't do fox hunting, where it's illegal, people will still do it.
Yeah.
Just not necessarily chase any foxes. They'll still go ahead with the whole shebang.
And I was going to say, that really shines a light on the fact that it's a thing much weightier than literally going out and say killing a deer or something like that. As you say, it's the pageantry, it's the fanfares, and then you guys brought up the fact that it was a male institution. So obviously taking it all the way back to probably the Normans, probably all the way back to like the Assyrians and the Egyptians and stuff. You know, nobility and aristocracy being predominantly male would go out, and they'd go out on these horses and they'd hunt things, whatever they're hunting, social activity. You know, I'm sure there was feasting and drinking and hilarious tales being told.
It's been replaced in American culture with golf, I think.
Yes. So actually, and we'll get to the interesting kind of metaphor there. So you guys actually had brought up that in the Victorian/Edwardian age, women having access to the hunt, the social institution, was actually then access to the broader, you know, it's where business was done.
Yes.
And in your metaphor, it's the golf club.
Exactly.
And I think suddenly women being allowed on the hunt means that you can come, you can join in the discussion of, you know, quote unquote, the man's world. And I think the fact that that starts to transition in the Victorian and Edwardian age is a really interesting, you know, there's a gendered aspect to this,
Yes.
which we'll get into in but 1 second. But any thoughts on that?
Well, yes. I think that historically, obviously, as you said, it's been a male-dominated pastime. However, there were always women who hunted. Queen Elizabeth famously hunted. There were women in the Elizabethan times and probably in the medieval times who were exceptional, and so they would hunt. And so there's already, when Ian says the title of the song, Hunting Girl, there's that sense of, okay, either we know that this is an exceptional person because she is doing this male thing, or she is on the forefront of a liberation movement and therefore exceptional in that way. So either way, this is an unusual thing.
And that kind of brings us to the central theme of this very, very, very chaste podcast. So we're going to get to the mythosexual theme within this. So obviously the idea of the female hunter. So, you know, for time immemorial, it's been, as I said, kind of a male pastime. So this would be the nobility, this would be the whatever, going out to hunt and stuff. But obviously there has been the female hunter as a mythological trope. You know, probably Artemis/Diana. It's a sport of life and death when we really get down to it. I think we then build to that, and it's a whole world I don't know much about, but horse riding and BDSM. And then we have the third element of aristocrat, Jesus Christ, of the aristocrats. Woo, here we go. Of aristocrats and peasant boys. And I think those three things, so the female hunter as kind of a mythological trope, horse riding/BDSM, and aristocrats and peasant boys as a romance trope, shall we say. I think those three things are being flung around in this song quite a bit.
And what overlaps all three of those things, which you have rightfully identified, Ian, is power play. So if you look at women hunters, as you mentioned, that's often a very powerful figure. If you look at Artemis or Diana, one of the myths about Diana is there's the guy who sees her bathing. He's in love with her. He catches her bathing with her votary nymphs. And he says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry that I saw you naked, but how cool." And she says, "Guess what, you idiot? I'm going to turn you into a stag and let your own hounds tear you apart." So, power dynamic. If you look at BDSM is really less about beating the crap out of each other. It is power play that expresses itself sometimes through beating the crap out of each other. But it's all about this person has the power, this person doesn't have the power. And then when you get into the nobility and the class system of the UK, which is something that Nick and I have had to educate ourselves about because we obviously knew a lot about BDSM, but less about
social class.
Less about social classes. But that's the whole play here. She has the power because of her nobility. How do we know that she's a noble? Well, she's hunting. She has all this fancy gear on.
Right. Yeah.
Even the question of, her horse refused to clear the fence. Nick and I talked about this.
Did it though?
Did it though? Did you have a problem with your horse? Probably not. Probably that horse will do exactly what you want it to do because you have the power.
She just saw a sexy peasant and was like, "Oh, my horse. Oh, no."
She used her position as a female in the hunt to say, I don't know how to jump this fence. I guess I'll have to wait until Hottie McBritches opens the gate for me.
And so that's what the theme of the song is. And I think that's kind of, obviously that's the most obvious theme about this is just all the power play.
Yeah.
For those at home, as long as it's consensual,
Do what you want to do.
Do what you want to do. Ride that horse, baby.
And is this consensual, this what happens in this song?
Debatable.
We'll never know.
I would say it's at best coercive.
Yeah.
I mean, I think kind of whatever the actual event is that's going on, I think the danger of their liaison, adds to the frisson.
Yeah.
Adds to the what?
Frisson.
Oh, I thought you said fursona, and I was like, wow, that's a take on this that I hadn't really considered, but that is interesting.
I don't even know.
The horse is actually a person in a horse costume. You got to read between the lines, but it's there.
All of this to say, I don't think we'll ever know what happened between the aristocrat and the sexy flautist in the woods, but
we can surmise. Yeah,
we can surmise. So let's cool the temperature down on this lovely winter night, and we're going to ring the sweet, sweet solstice bells. So this song was, I guess, requested by their manager as to please, please, please give us a Christmas song. Mm-hmm. So, of course, Ian Anderson went back to his little gnome toadstool and said, screw you, this is Festivus for the rest of us, and wrote this song about the solstice.
Yeah. Yep.
So here we are, ring out solstice bells. I think it's actually not a bad shot at it. I think you get the festive feeling. Mm-hmm. I think everything is simpler than their other songs on this album. So I think it has the radio-ness, if I want to call it that. Yeah. By the way, it didn't chart really at all. No. I think it bleeped, but didn't do, it was not a Christmas hit. But it is Christmas is only Tull could do.
If you Google 70s Christmas songs, it's in that pantheon of items that come up.
Oh, wow.
And the fact that it got any radio play at all is pretty damned impressive, considering that it is a song which blends at various points 8/8 and 7/8. I don't know of very many other songs that get radio play that have any 7/8 measures, and this flip-flops back and forth in between 7/8 and 8/8 in a mind-blowing way. So yeah, they did it in the way that only Tull could do, and gave the finger in the eye to the you have to write a pop hit request here.
Yeah. Sorry, it's like, what is it, Life's a Long Song or Living in the Past? I never remember which
Living
one.
in the Past was written as a radio hit.
Write this for the radio, okay, I'll do it in 5/4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
I'll make a pop song that no one can dance to.
So is Ian Anderson in any way sort of anti the church, or is he sort of anti kind of, I know he's obviously anti-establishment at times.
Yeah.
He's pro-church.
Right.
But like the physical aspect of a church, because every Christmas he does a concert for a various church and all the proceeds go to that church.
Yes, that's true. I would say, yes, he's pro-church, pro-God, anti-Christian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, this is, I guess this song is just pro-solstice rather than pro-Christmas, isn't it?
It fits into the entire world of the album.
Yeah.
And as you said, Ed, if he could reasonably say, oh, you wanted me to write a Christmas song? Well, I did. I just went further back in time. I went back to the roots of Christmas.
Yeah, right.
Sol Invictus or something. But still, like when I first heard this, I was like, this could be a McCartney song. This could be a McCartney Christmas song.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
There's a very 70s Christmas vibe about it.
I think, again, with the playing with, and the other songs, playing with folk tropes, in a sense, he's playing with Christmas tropes. Because you hear the bells.
Yes,
you're right. There's the little bells.
Yeah, the Victorian stuff. It's not medieval anymore.
Yeah. It does feel like a tinsel-covered Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I think at the very end, for instance, when he does all of the ring out solstice bells layered harmonies, it feels like carolers.
Yeah.
And this is why it's him taking on aesthetics from other things and then packaging them up in his little Tull package.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of almost impossible to do a Christmassy vibe song without touching on the Victorian elements.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is interesting that even this medieval vibe album, he still goes there.
Yeah.
It's a universal touchstone for Christmas, this sound.
And part of that is because the Victorians invented Christmas as we know it as modern people. They invented Christmas cards. They invented a lot of the traditions that we view as Christmassy comes from the Victorians.
Yeah. Awkward family dinners with your uncle. Victorian.
That's how that started. Yeah. Yeah.
the Peanut special was originally in German. As Prince Albert did all the voices.
I wish I knew Peanut in German. That'd be great.
So I guess the one final other thing I have about this song is at the very end, as I said, the ring out Solstice Bells harmonies. So most of Jethro Tull is Ian Anderson singing. Sometimes he'll double his voice or whatever. And there's maybe 2 parts of this album where he does multi-layered harmonies, and when it happens, because it happens so infrequently, it's special.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it really, again, kind of as you said, Ed, with the phaser, when he just adds this new little element, you're like, oh, well, that came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And boy, oh boy, did this keep it from being another little higgledy-piggledy flute song. So
It was flanger in, flanger.
Flanger.
You always get them two mixed up.
The hubris of
You'll get phaser. It's coming up.
Over the years, we've come to recognize the Ian harmony, which is him singing normally up here, and then he sings down here, and then he just puts them together, and that's it. But
Yeah.
when you do get those other voices, like later on when you get Dave Pegg, when Peggy sings along,
Yeah.
it's remarkable.
brings-
It's a really good sound, even though it's a simple harmony. You're not getting that perfect sandwich of the same voice making that sound, and it's really effective, and I think
It
it's
expands
exactly
it out
what
a little bit.
you have here. Yeah.
Any other thoughts about Ring Out Solstice Bells?
Just it's a great closer for the A side of the album, and you know, Nick and I talk a lot about the mediums under which Tull has published, which has been almost every medium that there is. But thinking about when things were recorded for vinyl, this was a choice to say we're going to finish up the album with Solstice Bells, and then you turn it over, and now it's Velvet Green,
It's Velvet Green,
which is a contrast.
Absolutely, and I think Velvet Green is an excellent opener to the second side.
Yes.
And for me, this is Tull's signature song.
Huh.
So I always think to myself about bands and their signature song. And for me, the signature song of a band is, on a practical sense, if you could give someone one song from a band, say this is probably the thing, you're getting all of Tull. And I think it's when they do their essence the best they ever could. And this has the skipping minstrel, the kind of low, creepy acoustic element, and the shocking breakdown in the middle. And so this has all of the elements that you could want out of Tull. And I was going to say, I think for those at home, Aqualung is a very, very good signature song. Like, there's a reason that that's the one. But for me, this is the essence, the very essence of Tull. So just a real quick personal aside, whilst I was on my little walk through the English countryside, suddenly the song came into clear focus. Because I was like, I know what Velvet Green is in a sense. It's the greenness of the countryside. But when you're walking on these kind of like heritage paths, there's these sheep tracks. So you've got kind of fern or heather or thistle, wherever you are. And it's, probably about 3 feet high or whatever. And between it, there's all these sheep tracks. And they have been chewed by sheep. So it's like a Gulf green. It is, nary a centimeter of grass. And it feels like you're walking on velvet. And it took me 35 years to realize this, because I was listening to this album when I was a fetus. It took me 35 years to, it's like, oh my God, it's like this green is made of velvet. And anyways, that was my epiphany this last week.
What a comfortable place to lay back and spread your legs,
That is exactly the point I was going to get.
Oh dear.
And this is one of those songs that put me in mind of Under Milk Wood again. There's like a section in that where they talk about these lovers going off into the night, to have that sexy moment. And it's it has that same sort of feel, tell your mother that I did it all night on the Velvet Green. It's like, it's like a coded word, isn't it?
Yep.
But yeah, this fertility ritual that this is the May fertility dance, as it were.
Yeah, I guess we'll start then with the what this song's about then.
Well,
and then we'll take the cold shower of the music.
And what way to herald in fertility than flute and glockenspiel combined? Gets me going.
The title of this song is so brilliant because it plays in so many different ways. Velvet Green, as you mentioned, Ian, is that distinctive English countryside biome of really short, comfortable grasses that seem like velvet. But you could also imagine the velvet green is a specific spot, a known spot.
Like Lover's Lane.
A proper noun, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. In Mexico, New York, where I grew up, it was the gravel pit.
Less comfortable.
Oof, nothing sexier.
Oof. Listen, we tried our best. But that was where kids would go and park their cars and smoke their dope and get handsy with each other. And if you said, "Oh yeah, I was out at the gravel pit," everyone knew exactly what that meant, except for the old.
You're playing glockenspiels.
Yeah.
You're playing glockenspiels. You're playing the flute.
Maybe the piccolo.
Yeah.
Does that not get you going?
And I was No, so I was going to say, I think, as I guess we were dancing around the subject here, so this song is about, in essence, could be young lovers in a sense, escaping to the Velvet Green, where they will do something. But it continues a folk tradition, and you guys put it the best I think I've ever heard it, as I'm going to marry you so hard.
Oh, yes!
Here we go.
Yeah.
So the folk tradition, and I think the one song that really came to mind here was Drink Down the Moon by Steel Ice Band. So this goes back to the kind of Fairport Convention era folk that we were talking about.
Yep.
And they brought back these things. And it's a tradition of a man coming to town. And I don't know if it's unsavory. It's kind of unsavory. It's nebulously savory. And he's coming to town, and he's saying, come with me and we'll elope, we'll marry, we'll whatever.
Yeah. Saying the sweet nothings to get her to come out to the Velvet Green.
That's it.
And that's it, And then probably disappearing once she goes home to tell her parents, hey, we're getting married and I'm in love. And then he's never seen again.
And that gets to the real practicalities of life pre-contraception, which was for a man, if you had sex, if you could skip town, then consequences were negligible. If you were a woman, that would be, this is one of my favorite lines in the song and probably the album, and August's rare delights may be April's fool. Guess how many months ahead April is from August?
Sweet, sweet 9.
Yeah. So you're totally right, Ian. There's that whole tradition of and there's so many songs about, I promise you this. Well, do you really promise me this? How do I know that you'll be true to me once I give you the flower of my garden, or whatever the metaphor is?
Right.
Yeah. And I think, again, this really is hearkening back, as we said, to that ancient tradition.
Yes.
But, and I think it, especially with kind of how low and, again, I use this word artistically, low and creepy the folk part is. And it's my favorite part of the album by far. But him saying, civilization is burning afar, there's something so intense about them being out on the Velvet Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in the gutter rhymes section of the album.
Yeah.
Yeah. This song was the first song of our trek through all of Talk Tull to Me. This was the first eye-opener song where Omen has a significantly dirtier mind than I do. So this was the first song where we came to the realization that if you think it's about sex, it's probably about sex. And I was very naive about this one. And he's like, oh, no. This is sex and this is sex. This is definitely sex. This is probably sex. But this song is about sex. And I was like, I don't know what to think anymore. It was mind blowing. It was eye opening. And I grew a mustache that day. I became a man.
I still have that mustache. It's got it locked up.
Yeah.
So I think this song for me, is what I think people imagine prog to be, as in a little gnome playing his little flutes and his synths. As in, I think this is like Eingen prog, this is the one. But I think, again, they elevate it so much farther beyond that. I think the whoever's playing the congos, that's going great. I think it feels way shorter than its 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they pack a lot of musical information to every song. And I think that's probably best represented with the song structure. So this is an A, B, C, B, A. And I think that actually ties back to kind of what we were saying about the ne'er-do-well at the center of the song. The first part is him probably skipping into town. The second part is the sweet nothings. The third part is some minstrels walking into frame for some reason. Then we get back to the sweet nothings, and then him having done whatever he wanted to do, he skedoodles.
Skips out of town.
He skips town. And I was going to say, I think the song actually musically highlights the narrative.
Absolutely.
And I can feel him like he's skipping along. He's got not a care in the world. He's going to find a young milkmaid, sing to her, skip town.
Yeah. Do what he's done the last couple of years. He knows the towns.
And you can feel that the song would loop back on itself and that
Yes.
he's singing this song at the next town.
Mm-hmm.
To zoom out even further, that fits in with the cyclical nature of the album itself. So it is a microcosm of the macrocosm of the album.
And it's right in the middle,
Yeah.
too, which is
Yeah.
aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah. And so the final thoughts I have about the music on this as well, to keep it not just twee folk, there's this like tremolo guitar that's just hiding in the back. And also D. Palmer orchestrates
The Jesus,
the Jesus out of
yes.
this song.
Yes.
Yeah, and you could just hear her doing every type of keyboard and what. Like I don't know. I can really hear the orchestration in this song.
Yeah.
It's got just in terms of time signature, they make a great usage of the different time signatures. I've counted it out probably years ago, but it keeps changing back and forth. There's measures of 3, there's measures of 4, there's measures of 5. It's really tricky to count, and that adds to that sense of excitement.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that that's an intentional thing? You know, do they actually map out those time signatures, or is this just playing off the vibe? And
It's so hard to tell. But
yeah.
I think I've learned to assume that anything we find in Tull is intentional because that is just how Ian operates. We've learned over time. If you hear it, it was probably meant to be there, almost certainly. So I think that they're playing a lot with these prog time signatures in this era. So there's that element to it. But I do think that the never quite knowing where the beat is going to be gives that element of, oh, there's this fresh, exciting character. Oh, I never know where I stand with him. I better follow him off into the woods. Oh, no.
I think those beat changes could have come about organically, not like we need to have a 3 here, then a 4, then a 5, then a 3, something like that. I think it could have been just Ian was in this mindset of having that fluctuation at times. I don't think it was necessarily like I'm going to write out the structure. It grew about in the creation of the song, but it just so happens that at that time their minds were all over the place with those signatures.
And that points to a little bit of how we've heard that Tull typically works. Typically, Ian will create the lyrics by himself, hide them in a dark closet, and say to the band, hey, here's the kind of general structure of the song that I want. You should play this. Here's the theme that I have. Now go and develop it. And then they put it all together and rehearse it musically. And once it's rehearsed musically, then Ian sings it. And the band doesn't hear the lyrics until that point.
Yeah.
So it could be that
Oh, that's interesting.
Dee created this great riff, dum ticka dum 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 ticka dum dum, and Martin created this great da 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 dum da dum. And to put them together, they found, oh well, you have to have a measure of 5 followed by a measure of 3 followed by a measure of 4.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was going to say, kind of, I guess whichever way it happens, it feels organic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I will say, like, I don't feel like it's like, oh, they've composed this. Certainly for this album, I just feel it flow nice and naturally.
Yeah, they're not trying to cram anything in here. It's very natural.
They're doing a little bit of cramming. Oh, but that's in the lyrics.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think for me, that's the biggest advance in this album, is that the lyrics are just, they're transcendent
Yes.
for me, for this
Yes.
album.
Yeah.
I think that was the thing, is I think sometimes he could get lost in his concepts or his jokes or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when he's amusing himself, I think
Yeah.
the rest of the piece always sounds full of energy.
Yeah, good call.
He follows
Yeah.
through on his promise that he makes in the very first track to bring you these kitchen prose, these gutter rhymes, these accessible. I'm going to give you art, but I'm going to make it accessible to you because it's for everybody.
So we then come to The Whistler. It's a fun breather for me before we get into the heaviness of pipe rock.
Yeah.
So I'd say this is probably, I don't know if it's my favorite song on the album, but it's the funnest song, I'll say.
Ian, this one's got a phaser in it. It's got a phaser.
Jeez Louise. No wonder I loved this. So I guess, okay, we'll start at the top then. So talk to me musically about this.
It's got a phaser in it. So
Go.
like a joke, but because there's so few ingredients in the equipment, someone has an MXR Phase 90. I know that that's what it is. I can hear it really clearly.
Yeah.
And I just love that about this whole album. There's lots of different instruments, but they're kind of as they are. Everything's stripped back and then just really well put together.
Mm-hmm.
And here, you've got the phases not on the electric guitar so much, it's on the acoustic guitar where it sounds beautifully used. And in the 70s, I think this is actually quite a new bit of gear, that particular pedal. So, you wouldn't have heard it that many times at this point. You hear it a lot in Pink Floyd, who uses the same one around the same time, but it's used on the acoustic guitar here, and it's just really nice usage of it.
It's on the acoustic, not on Martin's guitar? Oh, that's interesting.
It might be on both, actually, but to me, that's what jumps out as the nice usage of that particular bit of gear. Nothing special, but we haven't heard it yet on the album, and here it is.
Yeah.
Looking at the rhythm and the structure of the song, Ian is so good at playing with contrast, and I think that's part of what makes us want to come back and listen again and again. In this, he has juxtaposed these longer phrases. I'll buy you 6 bay mares to put in your stable. It's this like long kind of even beats. The whole thing is in 4, I'm pretty sure, but he has the verses which are more fluid, and then the musical riffs that that's all 16th note triplets. So starting off with that and then dropping into that slower version and then speeding back up, it's like shifting gears in a car, and you feel the sensuality when it slows down, and you feel the excitement when it hits that harder rhythm. Speaking of the Renaissance Fair, last episode, the first time I ever heard this song was by being covered by a Ren Fair folk band who had a piper and a fiddle and a bodhran and a guitar. And I thought it was a folk song because it is so deeply in those tropes. And I didn't clock the prog nature of it because I didn't know anything because I was 15. But I remember one time I was like, oh, Nick, it's like that song that I love by Empty Hats, The Whistler. And you were like, that is not an Empty Hats song. That is a Jethro Tull song. I was like, okay, I apologize. But it's so deep in that folk tradition that it's very convincing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Renaissance Festival where we worked, the Sterling Renaissance Festival, is known for being one of the more historically accurate, or they try to be the more historically accurate. So the one of the dramaturgs in charge of like allowing the music and stuff did not allow like
modern
Ed Sheeran covers, like anything modern that sounded folky.
Yeah.
He did allow this song though, because he also was a huge fan of Tull.
Yeah,
he would be, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and I guess that actually brings us nicely to the subject of the song, because I think it's it feels like a Renaissance subject. The whole goddamn album does, but this song feels like a Renaissance fairish subject or medieval subject. So I was trying to reach back. I'd heard the song, I don't know, when I was 15 or so. And I was like, what did I think this song was about? So my first crack at this was I had thought this was like a Pied Piper thing. So some sort of spirit or trickster or ne'er-do-well who stole children. I don't know why I thought this, because there's nothing in the lyrics to support this. But he whistles.
The Whistler,
But I also think, I genuinely think probably also the Wendigo from Native American mythology or whatever, where it's like there's a thing out in, in that case, the woods. Well, in this case, the woods as well, where it's like there's something whistling to you, saying, come hither or whatever.
Yeah.
However, I don't think there's any of that supported in this song. So what do you guys think this is about?
I've always interpreted it as almost like the 12 Days of Christmas. I'll buy you this, and then I'll buy you this, and I'll buy you this. We'll be lovers. It'll be great.
So a fun seduction.
Yeah, more not even like a seduction with the goal of like, let's spend our lives together, not let's hoof it out to the velvet green.
Yeah.
This is such a fascinating song. I might be too close to the song to be able to interpret it properly, because for a long time the character of this song was who I wanted to be. And I didn't know any better, and I was young, and I wanted to go and see the world. But there is a mythic quality to this, whether it's the Pied Piper or whether it's Zeus saying, hey, I'm going to give you all this stuff. I'm going to lavish you with affection. I can show you things that no one else can show you, but I'm going to not be here by next Saturday.
I'll be in the shape of a swan while I do it.
By the way, you like bulls, right? But there is a spiritual quality to this. All kinds of sadness I've left behind me. Many of the days that I have done wrong, but I'll be yours forever and ever. Climb in the saddle and whistle along. There's a modern country song. I think it's called "Will You Go With Me."
Dirks
Bentley.
Yep.
Which has a very similar theme. That sense of come with me and we'll ride to the edge of the world. We'll see the fire of the sunrise. We'll touch the boundaries of this existence. Our love can take us beyond the bounds of reality. And I think that's the thing that gets me excited about this song. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll climb on the saddle.
Yeah. Yet another ancient song from 1993, A Whole New World. No, I think that...
Yes.
Disney.
Absolutely.
Coming back to Disney.
That sense of like, I can show you magical wonders. And I think, as you're saying, maybe genuinely ancient trope of the roving musician going from town to town.
Absolutely. And oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you brought that up, Ian, because so much of the modern tradition of music, so much of the format of love songs themselves, the way that we think about love in the modern world was invented by the troubadours of the 12th and 13th centuries, who were the first people to say, hey, instead of just playing music for the church, I'm going to walk from here to here and play this music over here. Oh, it turns out that people really freaking like that. And probably I could get laid a lot.
A lot of old 12th century panties thrown at that time.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
But I also think that Ian is saying something about himself with this song, which is that his magic is music. Through the power of music, I will take you to these places. I will take you to the edge of the universe. I will show you a love that you've never known before, because the source of my power is my ability to be a musician.
To show you wonders.
Yeah. To show you wonders.
I feel like I often go to the lowest common denominator with some of this stuff, but
it's Omen's territory. Good company there.
But I say it's a bit simpler than that. I think he's literally playing a tin whistle.
Yes, he is. Yeah,
and it's like, so this is like he's delving into like Irish folk tradition.
Yeah,
playing the tin whistle. I think it's literally as simple as that. He's a whistler, and he's just going, I don't just play the flute, I play the tin whistle too. And it's simple. And then just the song is just words that came out of that.
Well, Ian has come out on many an occasion and said, I'm never going to tell you what any of my songs are. They're open for your interpretation, and how you interpret it is the right interpretation. Yeah. Like, there's only been like 2 or 3 where he said like, well, no, this is actually what this song is about. So I think it could be, hey, look at my new tin whistle, and I'll take you to the other realms.
And it's the genius of Jethro Tull is that it works on all those levels simultaneously. Yes. That's what is so. Which for Ian means you can't pin him down, which is something that he likes as well.
Yeah,
a slippery little salamander.
So slippery.
So we come to the meatiest song on this album, Pibroch.
These last two. A punch in the gut.
Punch in the gut. So this is based on a pibroch, which is a long-form Celtic-style song. Mm-hmm. So when I was first a little prog boy, little prog baby, I inherently loved this song because I was like, it's 8 minutes. I don't know. I love this song. Revisiting this, I actually think this was the most uneven song on this album.
Wow.
So for me, these past 7 songs have whistled by, and I'm genuinely like, the time just flies. They're like not a wasted note. It's all fantastic. This one was harder to digest, and I'm not going to say bad, but for me, this felt more like a Jackson Pollock painting.
Yeah,
where they're just like throwing stuff, and we've got Martin Barr just machine gunning his little guitar. We've got the mournful folk of Ian Anderson looking in on some lovers who are not his. And then we've got him just chewing on his flute. You could almost like literally hear him chewing the flute. So there's a lot of elements, and they don't flow for me as naturally as Velvet Green.
Yeah.
Now it creates a very interesting environment musically to be in.
I like that term, chewing the flute.
Yeah.
But enough about Velvet Green. Let's talk about Pibroch.
So the pibroch is a bagpipe.
Yes.
Thing there's no bagpipes, so they're trying to get a bagpipe sound using the reverse echo on this soaring lead sound.
Yes.
And
That
I think
banshee wail of a guitar.
it is a banshee wail.
Yeah.
That was a really good way of saying it. And what gives it that soaring lead sound is the treble booster. Now, that sound you hear on It's a Kind of Magic by Queen.
Really?
I think it's for the same reason. Like it's the Highlander theme track. And you can hear, it. It's like, oh, Tull did it. I'm sure.
Yeah.
That, like, this inspired that sound. Because you listen to it again now, I've said that, you will hear Brian May. And part of it is similarity in the gear. It's that treble booster that gives you that Brian May sound. But Martin Barr, that's also his signature sound as well. They play differently, obviously, but it's. I found it interesting when hearing it and then being a Queen fan, recognising it and not sure where does that come from.
Wow.
But I thought it's interesting to use that as a way to get a bagpipe sound. Where'd that come from?
So much of this album is about adaptation. We're going to take this old folk myth and we're going to adapt it into a prog rock and roll context. This is probably the most visible example of that, where I'm sure that Ian said, "Martin, I'd like you to make bagpipe sounds with your electric guitar," and walked out of the room. And Martin was just like, well, "Damn, okay. I guess I'll just figure out how to do that." And is it successful? Does it sound like a bagpipe? Maybe, maybe not. Because the other thing about a peak broke is that it is typically, if I recall correctly, and maybe you can correct me on this, Ed.
No, I can't.
No. Well, my runway is clear. I believe it's typically a song of mourning as well. And what does come through from Martin's playing is this
yes.
soul-wrenching, I am bearing my feelings out into the night. I think you're onto something, Ian, that this is uneven. For me, I would say it's intentional. And I think it puts the listener into a place of a little bit of discomfort because the philosophical tension of this song is uncomfortable. And I think that it's a strong enough image, it's a strong enough conflict internally that for me, it forgives all of the, is this a minute and a half too long maybe? Yeah, I kind of can forgive it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that brings us nicely to what the essence of the song is. And I think you are entirely right that the music supports the kind of the heartache that the song represents. So the lyric is Ian Anderson, or whoever, coming to what I imagine to be a wintry hut and looking in, and his life is going on without him.
Wow.
Whatever the background to that is, that's like the literal thing of what I believe to be happening is. Obviously, this is all then tinged with regret, humility, because he's got his cap in hand. Yeah, that's what I got emotionally from the song.
Yeah, like the rest of the album, musically and emotionally, we have fun times. We have festivals, we have eating, we have fornicating, we have everything. We're just plowing through. We've got this momentum and this inertia taking us to this wall of sound. And then we get this human moment, this really, truly human moment. It's not a character. It is our narrator. And we are seeing him as he experiences this really human, fragile moment. And everything building up to that. Yes, it's very jarring. But I think, like Omen said, like there's a purpose for that. And I like we were talking about with the time signatures, the 3, 5, 4, whatever. It was a choice. It was certainly a choice for it to happen. It wasn't like, oh, well, what are we going to do for the last 2 songs on the album? Well, we've got this in the bin. Let's throw it on there. I don't think so. Certainly not in 1976 or whenever this is. 76 Tull is it's very calculated.
You know, this is actually a track before we started the podcast, went like back when we were 16, 17. Nick and I literally stayed up all night talking about what is the story of this song. And we never came to a conclusion. And Nick's interpretation was always one way, mine was always another. But I think you broke it down really well, Ian, that this is him observing either his life or what could have been his life or what he wants to be his life. There is that separation. Talking about the relevance of these stories that pop up multiple places in Tull. If you look all the way forward to the year 2003, is it? The Christmas album?
Yeah.
There is a wonderful song that if you're not familiar with, I would suggest listening to, called First Snow on Brooklyn.
Oh, beautiful.
I mean, just hydrate yourself beforehand because you'll cry. But it talks about coming in on an evening flight, and then the salient verse is, now it's the first snow on Brooklyn and my cold feet are drumming, but you don't see me in the shadows from your cozy window frame. And last night who was in your parlor wrapping presents in the late hour to place upon your pillow as the morning came?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
No, and I think, I was saying the arc of the year through this album, this is the cold, dark winter.
Yeah.
And so you had talked a little bit ago about Velvet Green, not knowing what that song was about in a younger version of yourself.
Yeah.
So I, got the song at age 15 or whatever, and I don't know what I could have possibly thought this song was about, but I discovered the song at roughly the same time as Led Zeppelin's No Quarter. So in my mind, this was the second half of that song, and it completely unforced connection. But I always was like, the shredding wailing of the guitar was the winter gale. And I never really completed the story as to why some ice-hardened Vikings would come upon a hut and look mournfully in at a life that could have been theirs. I didn't ask too many questions, but I was like, that was the imagery that the song evoked, was the frosty gale, a hut, but it's not your hut anymore. Mm-hmm. It was your hut, but it's not your hut anymore. Right. And it was your life, and maybe it was your wife, or it was whatever, but it ain't anymore. So yeah, this is a Darkest Depths of Winter song.
Yeah.
Sometimes adjusting to a new life, whether it's pleasant or not, can be goodbye to a previous one. This is a new marriage, new house, maybe there's a bit of that in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that being on the outside and looking into something is part of the human experience. I think we all experience that at some point.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Shelter from the Storm, the Bob Dylan song, and that feeling of just being exposed out in the world and just, hard and hungry and cold and wet. I remember when I was studying in Paris, I was dreadfully poor and it was cold and raining, and I would look through the shop windows at all the baked goods and just feel like, oh my God, I wish that I had a life where I could just walk in and buy that. But I don't, and I have to, and I felt like this song, like cap. I was very cap in hand. It's very humbling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is our narrator looking at his ex-wife's Facebook page.
So we're out in the cold, but we are to be warmed by the fire at midnight. So for me, this is probably the simplest theme on this album, where he's sitting by a fire, metaphorically putting up his boots, getting the hot cocoa out. But I think on a deeper level, that's what he did for this album, is he was divesting himself of the stress of life. And I believe you guys said this, the take off your makeup thing is obviously him telling his lover or whoever, oh, go upstairs, take off your makeup, you're at home. But also it's him taking off the makeup of the world, taking off the performance mask or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, this was the episode that we recorded at the camp.
In the woods.
In the woods, yeah, I forgot about that.
The woods.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Our ill-fated camping trip.
Oh, God. In Roscoe, New York. This song is very special for us.
Yes, it is.
This is the song that I've been singing as a lullaby to my son for the last 7 years.
Oh.
And it's also... Wait, where's the camera?
You got it. Yeah, a little closer.
The newt. Omen and I have the same newt tattoo that we got right before you went to Italy, I think.
Right before I went to England for the first time.
Yeah, in sophomore year of college. And the newt is from this song.
Yeah. Nick got his on his ankle. I'd show you where I got mine, but maybe after we know each other better.
Yeah, we'll put it on the OnlyFans.
Yes. So this is so personal for us, and it's hard to separate myself from that. But when we did meet at the Renaissance Fair, it was 12 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, I don't know, in the summer. And then we'd go back to school, and the internet wasn't really a thing. We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
So during the cold, dark winters, because I didn't really fit in that well at my high school, I would think about my friends particularly Nick, that I had met at the Renaissance Fair, and just ache to be back in that warm, supported environment where I felt like I could be myself. And so for me, this song is always, like you said, taking off the mask of the outside world. This is the moment where you get to be around the person, whether it's a lover or whether it's a friend or whether it's just by yourself. This is the moment where you get to be your authentic self again.
Yeah. And I think, where this, I mean, obviously it's placed in this part of the album for that reason, where it's like, this is the coming home, hanging up the coat, sitting by the fire thing. Yeah, and that actually brings me to probably my only problem with this album. Is that this is the only song where I think you should have just left well enough alone, because I was just sinking into it. I was sinking into my armchair.
Oh, the guitar, the 3-minute guitar.
Had to break it down for some reason. And I actually I'm sinking down now.
That's how guitars say goodbye.
No, and actually, genuinely, maybe... and
they have their own way, you have to embrace it.
No, and maybe you've saved it for me, because I think there might be an element then of maybe it is the final, like, maybe Martin Barr did just have to wave goodbye. Maybe that isn't it. Okay, I like that.
Here's how I think about it. On the one hand, it is the last track on the album, and so, yeah, I think there's a little bit of a last hurrah there. But I also think, sometimes... I work from home now, so this is less the case now. But when I used to work out in the world, I would...
do a guitar solo before you left the building?
Always. Yeah, they're like, what's that sound? Oh, it's 5 o'clock. Omen's leaving. No, when it takes me, I'm a little awkward. I do a lot of social masking when I'm out in public, especially if it's with people that I don't know. And we've talked a lot about Ian, how Ian's stage character is completely manufactured, completely different than how he is as a person. And that's necessary for him. Sometimes when I get home and I get to take my pants off, I do a little jig, because I'm like, there's a joy in that authenticity. There's a joy in I'm not beholden to anyone. And so for me, that's where that comes in. It's like, I'm home, I can be myself. The person I love the most in the world is upstairs getting ready to be themselves with me. I just got my favorite plate of cheese out. Yeah.
Yeah. The taking off the pants and the jig are not metaphorical. They do actually happen. Yeah.
Happen at the same time.
Wow, you guys have genuinely saved it for me. So I apparently have no problems with this album now. So this is great.
For what it's worth, that bothered me too until we discussed it on the podcast.
Until you took your pants off.
Until I took my pants off.
And did a cheese jig.
The old cheese jig.
The pantsless cheese dig is a bonus track that never made it onto the album.
It's my favorite jam band, actually.
So I guess my final wrap-up are really just highlighting the fact that I really do think this is the perfect concept album. And as I have probably said before, I think a concept album for me is successful when it's like the same painting viewed by like 9 different views or something like that. And I think that's what this is. This is Songs from the Woods, and you have 8 different visions, or 9 different visions of nature and the woods and the wild hunt and, sprigging and green growing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's perfect concept album, but it's obviously different views. So as we've said, they kept the variety at each stage.
I think the idea of having a concept album that's actually happened organically because of someone's experience is actually a rare thing in
like
itself.
Emotional place.
It's a rare thing in itself.
Yeah.
That someone hasn't gone out of their way to go, I'm going to do a concept album about this thing. It's just happened.
We've talked ad nauseum about what is a concept album, what is not a concept album. Can you say something is a concept album with a capital C versus a lowercase c? And, I think any album could be a concept album, and every album is not a concept album except for Things of Brick. But I would put this in the category of concept with a little c. But if we take that word away from it, I think what Ian has extremely successfully done, Ian Anderson, is created a world and brought us into it. And that is one of the things that I love so much about this album. I listened to this vinyl on my Victrola this morning, and from the second that the needle dropped, that warmth just comes blasting through with that first set of harmonies. And I literally stopped in my tracks. I was like, oh my God, yes, this world. Oh, here I am.
You forget how good it is until you put that first toe back in the water, and then you're just inundated. You can't not.
And I think that's why, for me, it's successful in terms of its album structure.
Yes.
In so much as when it starts with Song from the Woods, kind of, like, I don't know, like the Star Wars rolling opening credits or something, when you're like,
those French horns.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, but I think it's like, it's like, oh my goodness, because it's a movie I've seen,
There's a familiarity
this is an album
to it.
I've heard, but you're like, oh my goodness, it's beginning. And I'm getting strapped in to go on this ride, and I think it's great in that sense. And I talk a lot about the geography of an album where it feels like you have actually physically been in a place. And I feel like, I've been to the Velvet Green, or I've been on a hunting trip, or whatever it is. And this is credit to both the musical landscape, but also his lyrics.
Yeah.
I love the way that you express that, and it actually relates strongly to something that Ian Anderson has said a number of times in the past, that he has described the way that he approaches songwriting as painting. And he says, I don't do portraits, I do landscapes.
Nice, yep.
Which isn't to say he never does focused character studies, but more often what you see is, here is the landscape, and here is a figure in the distance, and now we're going to zoom into that figure. And really, you could say that this, as you just did, this entire album is that. I'm going to give you a painting of the place, but now I'm going to show you, I love that. I'm going to show you nine perspectives on it that are different.
A weird comparison, but if you ever read Tolkien's work, you feel like he's taking his sweet time getting to the point, showing you lots of grandiose sort of aspects, and then action happens in like a paragraph. And it's like there's a similar sort of vibe, I think, with a Tull song.
Well, and part of that is because they're drawing from similar sources. A lot of Tolkien's inspiration was reaching back to those ancient British myths and reinterpreting them in his own way, and that's exactly what Ian is doing.
Whoa.
And I guess to bring it all around, I guess it's that you're trying to say this is how nature works. This is what's going on out there. There's a Jack in the Green. He's making the snowdrops blossom and whatnot. I think all of these really ancient songs were trying to say, hey, look at the landscape. Now let me tell you about it in a fun way.
That is so gorgeously and cheekily and absurdly summed up by the image that's on the back of the album, which is a tree stump with its rings with a record player arm just stuck on it like a frickin' Marcel Duchamp art piece. But the implication is literally the trees themselves have music in them, and if you know how to drop the needle onto it, I have the special knowledge as Ian, as the whistler, as the presenter, I have the special knowledge of how to put this on the old Victrola, and now you're going to literally hear the songs from the wood. The songs literally from the wood, from the grains. I just think it's so silly.
Beautiful.
That's deep. So on that has been Jethro Tull's Songs from the Woods. I have been Ian Prize, and this has been a Sort of Young Person's Guide to Prog Rock. I want to thank my guests, Nick.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Good time.
Thank you for being here, Omen.
Great to talk Tull with you, with such fine gentlemen.
It has been wonderful to talk Tull, and of course, Ed Thomas. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks for letting me talk about guitars and stuff. Yeah, it just
of
makes me happy.
course. Fabulous. So Jethro Tull would go off to finish the folk trilogy, and then break up the original crew, and embark on a wild ride, the ride you can follow along with on the Talk Tull to Me podcast. But next time, we truly kick off the Rising Phoenix era of prog with ELP's Brain Salad Surgery. I will see you next time.